A mail-order bride clutched her crying baby as the train whistle echoed across the empty platform. Her husband-to-be had taken one look at her and the child she'd hidden in her letters, then disappeared into the crowd. With nowhere to go and no money left, she was about to face the harsh frontier winter alone, until a weathered cowboy approached and said words that would change everything. "Ma'am, I don't know your story, but I'll never leave you." What he discovered about her past would test that promise in ways neither could imagine. The October wind cut through Anna's thin dress like a knife as she stood on the wooden platform of Cedar Falls Station. Baby Emma's cries mixed with the fading sound of the departing train, and Anna felt her heart sink deeper with each passing moment. She had traveled 3 days from Boston with nothing but hope and desperation, carrying everything she owned in a single worn carpet bag. Now, as the dust settled around the empty platform, that hope felt as cold as the Wyoming air. Thomas Mitchell had seemed different in his letters. Kind, understanding, eager for companionship on his ranch outside town. But when he'd seen her step off the train with Emma in her arms, his face had changed completely. "You never mentioned a baby," he'd said, his voice flat and angry. "I'm not looking to raise another man's child." Before Anna could explain, before she could tell him the truth about her marriage and why she'd fled Boston, he turned his back and walked away. Just like that, 3 months of correspondence and dreams had vanished into the crowd. Anna sank onto a wooden bench, pulling her shawl tighter around Emma's small body. The baby was only 18 months old, too young to understand why her world kept changing, why they never seemed to stay anywhere long enough to feel safe. Anna's hands trembled as she counted the coins in her purse. $2.37. Enough for maybe 3 days of meals if she was careful. But winter was coming to Wyoming, and she had no idea where they would sleep tonight. "Excuse me, ma'am." The voice was deep and gentle, with the slow drawl of a man who'd spent his life outdoors. Anna looked up to see a tall cowboy standing near her bench, his hat in his hands. He appeared to be around 35, with sun-weathered skin and kind brown eyes that reminded her of her father. His clothes were clean but worn, the practical outfit of a working rancher rather than a wealthy landowner. "I don't mean to intrude," the cowboy continued, "but I couldn't help but notice what happened with Mitchell. That man's got no honor, leaving a lady and child stranded like this." He gestured toward the empty platform. "Name's Jake Thompson. I've got a ranch about 5 miles out of town." Anna shifted Emma to her other arm, studying this stranger's face. In Boston, she learned to be wary of men who approached women in distress. But something about Jake Thompson felt different. There was no calculation in his eyes, no hint of the predatory look she'd grown to fear. Still, she'd been fooled before. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Thompson," she said carefully, "but Emma and I will manage just fine." The words sounded hollow, even to her own ears. They both knew she was lying. Jake nodded slowly, as if he understood her caution. "I'm sure you're a strong woman, ma'am. Had to be to come all this way on your own. But strength doesn't keep the cold out, and we're expecting snow before the week's over." He looked down at Emma, who had finally stopped crying and was now staring up at him with curious blue eyes. "Little one there looks tired from a journey." Anna felt tears threatening to spill over, but she blinked them back. She couldn't afford to show weakness, not when Emma depended on her. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Thompson?" "Nothing improper," Jake said quickly, seeming to understand her concern. "I've got a small cabin on my property, been empty since my foreman moved on last spring. You and the baby could stay there until you figure out your next step. No strings attached, no payment expected, just basic human decency." The offer was too generous, too perfect. Anna had learned that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "Why would you help a complete stranger?" Jake was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving from Anna to the baby and back again. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, tinged with an old sadness. "Lost my wife 2 years ago. She was carrying our first child when the fever took them both. I know what it's like to feel alone in this world, and I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone, especially not a mother with a baby to protect." The raw honesty in his voice hit Anna like a physical blow. She saw the pain he carried, recognized it, because she carried her own version of that same desperate loneliness. But pain can make people cruel as easily as it could make them kind. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. Emma began to fuss again, and Anna realized the baby was hungry. She had enough milk powder for maybe 2 more feedings, and after that, she couldn't bear to think about after that. "Ma'am," Jake said gently, "I don't know your story, and I won't pry. But I can see you're running from something, and I can see you're scared. I'm not asking for your secrets. I'm just asking to let me help. Whatever brought you here, wherever you came from, I give you my word. I'll never leave you to face it alone." The promise hung in the air between them, simple and profound. Anna looked into Jake Thompson's eyes and saw something she hadn't encountered in months: genuine compassion without expectation of return. It terrified her almost as much as it relieved her. "I have some experience with medicine," she said, finally testing the waters. "I can help around your ranch in exchange for shelter. I'm not afraid of hard work." Jake's face brightened. "That's generous of you, ma'am. Ranch always needs tending, and I'd welcome the company. Been too quiet out there since I've been on my own." As they walked toward Jake's wagon, Anna carrying Emma and Jake managing her single bag, she wondered what she'd gotten herself into. In her letters to Thomas Mitchell, she'd been careful to present herself as a simple woman seeking a simple life. But she wasn't simple at all. She was Elizabeth Whitman, daughter of a prominent Boston physician, graduate of the Women's Medical College, and wife to one of the city's most respected and most dangerous men. The baby gurgled softly as Jake helped them into the wagon, and Anna noticed how naturally he supported Emma's head, how carefully he made sure they were both comfortable before climbing up to the driver's seat. This cowboy had promised never to leave them. But what would he do when he discovered the truth about who she really was? And more importantly, what would happen when the people hunting for Elizabeth Whitman finally tracked her down to this remote Wyoming ranch? As the wagon pulled away from Cedar Falls Station, Anna allowed herself one last look back at the platform where her old life had finally died. Whatever came next, there was no going back now. The ride to Jake's ranch passed in comfortable silence, broken only by Emma's occasional babbling and the steady clip-clop of horse hooves on the dirt road. Anna found herself stealing glances at the man beside her, trying to understand what drove someone to help complete strangers. In her experience, men always wanted something in return. But Jake Thompson seemed content to simply drive his wagon through the Wyoming landscape, asking no questions and making no demands. "That's quite a vocabulary your little one has," Jake observed as Emma pointed at a passing hawk and made excited sounds. "She's bright for her age." Anna smiled despite her exhaustion. "She's been trying to say bird for weeks now. Gets frustrated when the sounds don't come out right." She paused, then added carefully, "I've been reading to her since she was born. They say it helps with development." Jake nodded approvingly. "My mother was the same way with me and my brothers. Said education was the one thing nobody could take away from you." He glanced at Anna with curiosity. Not many folks out here put much stock in book learning, especially for women. The comment made Anna realize she needed to be more careful. A simple mail-order bride wouldn't necessarily know about child development theories or have strong opinions about early education. She was already revealing too much about her background without meaning to. The ranch appeared as they crested a small hill, and Anna was pleasantly surprised by what she saw. The main house was modest but well-maintained, with a wraparound porch and flower boxes beneath the windows. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a barn, chicken coop, and what looked like a workshop. Everything spoke of a man who took pride in his work and his land. "The cabin's just over there," Jake said, pointing to a small structure about 100 yards from the main house. Built it for my foreman back when I was running more cattle. It's got a good stove, solid roof, and a well nearby. Should be comfortable enough for you and the baby." As they approached the cabin, Anna noticed the garden plot beside it, now brown and withered from the approaching winter. But she could see the careful planning that had gone into it. Herbs near the kitchen window, vegetables arranged for optimal sun exposure, even a small section that looked like it had been set aside for flowers. "Your foreman was a gardener?" she asked. Jake chuckled. "That was all Martha's doing, my late wife. She insisted every building on the ranch should have its own garden. Said it made each place feel like home instead of just somewhere to sleep." His expression grew wistful. She had grand plans for this whole property. Wanted to turn it into the kind of place where families would want to settle, not just work. Anna felt a pang of sympathy for the loneliness in his voice. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman." She was that. Jake helped Anna down from the wagon, then carefully lifted Emma. "Come on, let's get you both settled before the baby gets fussy again." The cabin's interior was simple but clean, with a main room containing a stone fireplace, small kitchen area, and table with 2 chairs. A separate bedroom held a single bed and a wooden cradle that looked handmade. Anna's breath caught when she saw it. "I made it when Martha got pregnant," Jake explained quietly. "Never got used. Seemed wrong to just let it sit empty in the main house." Anna ran her fingers along the smooth wood, imagining the hope and love that had gone into each carefully carved detail. "It's beautiful. Are you sure you want Emma to use it?" "Can't think of a better purpose for it," Jake replied firmly. "Martha would have wanted it that way." As Jake built up the fire and showed Anna where to find supplies, she found herself relaxing for the first time in months. Emma seemed to sense the change in atmosphere too, becoming more playful and vocal as she explored the cabin's safe confines. "I'll bring some milk and eggs over from the main house," Jake said, "and there's a good supply of firewood stacked outside. Don't hesitate to ask if you need anything else." After he left, Anna set about making the cabin feel like home. She unpacked their few belongings, trying to make them stretch to fill the space without looking pathetic. But as she pulled out Emma's spare dress, a small bottle rolled out of the carpet bag and across the floor. Anna quickly retrieved it, but not before noticing the Latin label on the side. It was medicine she prepared herself back in Boston, a mixture for infant digestive troubles that worked better than anything available in regular pharmacies. She made it using knowledge gained from her medical training, something she definitely couldn't explain as a simple mail-order bride. A knock at the door made her heart jump. She quickly stuffed the bottle back in her bag as Jake entered with a basket of supplies. "Brought you some basics to get started," he said, setting the basket on the table. Fresh bread, milk, eggs, and some preserves Martha put up before. He trailed off, then continued more briskly. "Should keep you fed for a few days while you settle in." "That's very generous," Ennis said, genuinely touched. "I promise I'll find ways to earn my keep. I'm quite handy around a ranch." Jake raised an eyebrow. Most city women I've met wouldn't know one end of a cow from the other. Anna froze, realizing her mistake. She'd never mentioned being from city, but somehow Jake had picked up on it. I grew up on a farm back east," she said quickly. "Small place, but we had some livestock." "Must have been some farm," Jake observed mildly. "The way you examined that medicine bottle earlier, checked the label real careful like, as if you could actually read what it said." Anna's heart began to race. How much had he seen? How much did he suspect? "I can read a little," she admitted. "My father believed girls should have some education." "Nothing wrong with that," Jake said, but his eyes remained thoughtful. "It's just unusual out here. Most mail-order brides I've heard about come from pretty simple backgrounds." The conversation was becoming dangerous territory. Anna busied herself with arranging the supplies Jake had brought, hoping to deflect his attention. But as she handled a jar of preserves, she automatically turned it to read the label and check the preparation date. Exactly the kind of automatic behavior that someone with medical training would display. Jake noticed, of course. He seemed to notice everything. "Anna," he said quietly, I meant what I said about not prying into your business. But I want you to know, whatever your story is, whatever you're running from, it doesn't change my promise. I'll never leave you to face it alone." The kindness in his voice nearly brought tears to her eyes. Here was a man offering unconditional protection to someone he barely knew, asking nothing in return. It was the opposite of everything she'd experienced in her marriage to Richard. But as Emma began to fuss and Anna automatically prepared a feeding using precise measurements and medical knowledge she shouldn't possess, she wondered how long she could maintain this deception. Jake Thompson was clearly more observant than she'd hoped. And if he could see through her disguise so easily, what would happen when the private investigators Richard had surely hired finally track her down? As she settled Emma for the night in the beautiful handmade cradle, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed new identity was already beginning to crumble. The question wasn't whether Jake would discover the truth about Elizabeth Whitman. It was whether he'd still want to protect her when he did. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that Anna had never experienced before. Days filled with honest work and peaceful evenings. Nights where she fell asleep without listening for footsteps in the hall or checking the locks on the doors. For the first time since her marriage to Richard, she began to remember what it felt like to breathe freely. Jake had been true to his word about not prying, but Anna could see the questions in his eyes growing stronger each day. She couldn't help herself from revealing too much, automatically organizing his medical supplies by Latin names, correctly diagnosing a sick calf with symptoms Jake had never seen before, and demonstrating a knowledge of herbal remedies that impressed even the ranch's longtime hands. "You sure do know a lot for someone who grew up on a small farm," Jake observed one morning as Anna expertly treated a cut on his hand with a poultice she'd mixed herself. Her fingers were gentle but confident as she cleaned the wound, and Jake found himself watching her face more than necessary. "Like I said, my father valued education," Anna replied, but she could feel heat rising in her cheeks. Standing this close to Jake, feeling the warmth of his skin under her hands, made her acutely aware of how different he was from Richard. Where her husband had been controlling and cold, Jake was patient and kind. Where Richard had demanded obedience, Jake asked for nothing. "Must have been quite a father," Jake said softly, not moving his hand away even though Anna had finished bandaging it. "The way you handle Emma, the way you know about medicine and ranching, seems like he taught you to be independent." Anna stepped back quickly, disturbed by how much she enjoyed his closeness. Independence is important for women. We can't always count on others to take care of us. "No," Jake agreed, "but that doesn't mean you have to face everything alone." The conversation was interrupted by Emma toddling over from where she'd been playing with wooden blocks Jake had carved for her. In the past weeks, the baby had grown attached to Jake in a way that both warmed and terrified Anna. Emma would cry when Jake left for his daily ranch work and clap excitedly when she saw him returning. She'd started reaching for him when she was tired, and just yesterday, Anna had heard her trying to say "Papa" while pointing at Jake. "Looks like someone wants attention," Jake said, scooping Emma up with the easy confidence he'd developed over the past weeks. The baby immediately snuggled against his shoulder, thumb in her mouth. "She shouldn't get so attached," Anna said, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. "We won't be staying forever." Jake's expression grew serious. "Where exactly are you planning to go? Winter's coming fast, and travel won't be safe with a baby until spring." It was a reasonable question, but Anna had no answer. She'd been so focused on running from Richard that she'd never really planned what came after. "I'll find work somewhere, maybe in a bigger town where there are more opportunities." "What kind of work?" Jake pressed gently. "Because for what I've seen, you've got skills that would be valuable anywhere. The way you handled Mrs. Patterson's pneumonia last week, how you helped birth the Henderson's calf. Folks around here are starting to talk about your abilities." Anna's heart sank. She'd hoped to keep a low profile, but it seemed her medical knowledge was too obvious to hide completely. "I just try to help where I can. And that's exactly what makes you special," Jake said, shifting Emma to his other arm. This territory needs people like you. People who care about others, who have knowledge to share. You could build a real life here. The word life hung between them, loaded with possibilities that Anna didn't dare consider. Because building a life required honesty, and honesty would destroy everything she'd found here. That afternoon, while Jake worked in the far pasture and Emma napped, Anna decided to walk to town for supplies. Cedar Falls was small but growing, with new families arriving regularly to claim homesteads and start fresh lives. Anna envied them their freedom to begin again without looking over their shoulders. She was coming out of the general store when she noticed the stranger. He stood beside the telegraph office, well dressed in a way that marked him as an outsider. His suit was too fine for Wyoming, his shoes too polished for frontier dust. But it was his eyes that made Anna's blood run cold. Calculating eyes that swept the streets systematically, studying every face. Anna pulled her bonnet lower and walked quickly toward the wagon, her heart pounding. A private investigator. It had to be. Richard's money could buy the best, and she'd been foolish to think she could hide forever in a small frontier town. She made it home in record time, her mind racing with possibilities. Pack quickly and leave tonight? But where could she go with a baby in tow and winter approaching? Try to brazen it out and hope the investigator moved on without identifying her? But if he had a photograph? Jake found her pacing in the cabin when he returned from the pasture, Emma crying in her arms because Anna was too agitated to comfort her properly. What happened? He asked immediately, taking the baby and soothing her with practiced movements. There was a man in town, asking questions. I think. Anna couldn't finish the sentence. How could she explain without revealing everything? Jake's expression grew grim. What kind of questions? About newcomers. Women traveling alone with children. Anna sank into a chair, all her careful composure finally cracking. Jake, there are things about me you don't know. Things that could put you in danger just for helping me. Anna. Jake knelt beside her chair, still holding Emma, but reaching out to take Anna's trembling hand. Whatever you're running from, we can face it together. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. The kindness in his voice broke something inside her. You don't understand. My real name isn't Anna. It's Elizabeth. Elizabeth Whitman. And my husband, he's a powerful man who doesn't like to lose things he considers his property. Jake's eyes widened, but he didn't pull away. Your husband, is he Emma's father? Yes, but he never wanted her. Said a child would interfere with his social standing. Well, I tried to protect her from his anger. Anna touched her ribs unconsciously, remembering the pain. I knew I had to get her away from him before he seriously hurt one of us. So you became Anna and answered Thomas Mitchell's advertisement. Anna nodded, tears streaming down her face. I thought if I could disappear completely, start over somewhere he'd never think to look, but he's found me anyway. That man in town, he's one of Richard's investigators. It's only a matter of time before he figures out where I am. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd told him. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and sure. Then we'd better make sure you're prepared when he comes calling. We? Anna looked up at him in surprise. Jake's smile was gentle but determined. I told you I'd never leave you to face anything alone. That promise doesn't change just because I know your real name now. He stood up, still holding Emma, and extended his free hand to Anna. But if we're going to fight for your freedom, we need to do it right. Will you marry me, Elizabeth? Anna stared at him in shock. You can't be serious. You barely know me, and now there's danger. I know enough. Jake interrupted. I know you're brave and kind and smart. I know you love Emma more than your own safety. I know you make me want to believe in second chances. His expression grew intense. And I know that as my legal wife, you'd have protections under territorial law that a runaway woman doesn't have. Anna felt something shift inside her chest, hope warring with fear. Jake, if you marry me, you'll be putting yourself directly between me and a very dangerous man. Richard won't just give up. He'll come here, and he'll bring trouble with him. Let him come, Jake said firmly. This is my land, my home. And if you'll have me, you and Emma will be my family. That means something in Wyoming. That means I'll protect what's mine. Emma chose that moment to reach for Anna, babbling something that sounded remarkably like Mama and Papa mixed together. Looking at them both, this man who offered everything and asked for nothing in return, this child who deserved a chance at happiness. Anna felt her carefully constructed walls finally crumble completely. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Jake's smile lit up his entire face, but before either of them could say another word, the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast made them both freeze. Through the window, Anna could see a rider coming hard toward the ranch, and her heart sank as she recognized the fine clothes and determined posture. The investigator had found her. The rider pulled up in front of the cabin in a cloud of dust, his expensive suit and polished boots marking him as clearly as if he'd worn a sign saying outsider. Anna clutched Emma tighter, her worst fears confirmed as the man dismounted with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. Mrs. Elizabeth Whitman, he called out, removing his hat with mock politeness. My name is Detective Morrison. Your husband has been quite worried about you and his daughter. Jake stepped protectively in front of Anna, his hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. I'm afraid you're mistaken, friend. This is Anna Thompson, and she's about to become my wife. Morrison's smile was cold and calculating. How romantic. Unfortunately, Mrs. Whitman is already married, which makes any other ceremony both illegal and invalid. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an official-looking document. I have a court order here demanding the return of Mr. Richard Whitman's wife and child to Boston immediately. Anna's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to speak. That document has no authority in Wyoming territory, and Emma stays with me. Actually, Mrs. Whitman, it does. Morrison's tone was smugly confident. Your husband has connections in Washington. This order is signed by a federal judge. It supersedes any local territorial laws. Jake moved closer to Morrison, his voice dangerously quiet. Maybe you didn't hear the lady clearly. She said the child stays with her, and I'm telling you to get off my property. Morrison laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Mr. Thompson, isn't it? I've done my research on you too. A simple rancher with no political connections, no money, and no legal standing to interfere with a federal custody order. He gestured toward the main road. There's a stagecoach leaving Cedar Falls for the railroad in 2 hours. Mrs. Whitman and the child will be on it. Over my dead body, Jake said flatly. That can be arranged, Morrison replied, his hand moving toward his own weapon. Mr. Whitman was very specific about recovering his property, regardless of the obstacles. The word property made Anna's blood boil. She stepped out from behind Jake, her fear transforming into righteous anger. I'm not Richard's property. Emma is not his property. We are human beings with the right to choose our own lives. Morrison's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Whitman, you seem to have forgotten your place. Your husband has been very patient, allowing you this little adventure. But patience has limits. Come along quietly, and this doesn't have to become unpleasant. The lady's made her choice clear, Jake said, his stance shifting into something more dangerous. Time for you to respect it and leave. Before Morrison could respond, the sound of multiple horses approaching made them all turn. Sheriff Davis rode up with 3 of Cedar Falls' most respected citizens, Dr. Patterson, Judge Coleman, and Mayor Henderson. Anna's heart leaped with hope until she saw their grim expressions. Mr. Thompson, Sheriff Davis, said heavily, I'm afraid there's been a development. This federal order is legitimate. I have to enforce it. Jake's jaw tightened. Tom, you've known me for 8 years. Have I ever given you reason to doubt my word? This isn't about your word, Jake. It's about the law. The sheriff looked genuinely pained. Mrs. Whitman has to return with Detective Morrison. Dr. Patterson urged his horse forward. Actually, Sheriff, there might be another way. The elderly doctor's eyes were kind as he looked at Anna. Mrs. Whitman, would you be willing to testify under oath about the reasons you left Boston? Anna glanced at Jake, drawing strength from his encouraging nod. Yes, I'll tell the truth about everything. Morrison stepped forward aggressively. This is highly irregular. The federal order doesn't override a territorial investigation into potential criminal activity. Judge Coleman interrupted smoothly. If Mrs. Whitman has evidence of abuse, we have a legal obligation to examine it before enforcing any custody arrangements. Abuse. Morrison scoffed. Mr. Whitman is one of Boston's most respected citizens. These are obviously fabricated claims designed to delay. Then he won't mind having them investigated properly, Mayor Henderson said firmly. Sheriff Davis, I'm calling for an emergency hearing. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Anna felt a surge of hope, but Morrison wasn't finished. Fine, but Mrs. Whitman remains in custody until the hearing. I won't risk her disappearing again. She'll stay at my ranch, Jake said immediately. You have my word she'll be at the hearing. Your word isn't sufficient, Morrison replied coldly. Mrs. Whitman comes with me to town, or I'll assume she's being held against her will and respond accordingly. The implied threat hung heavy in the air. Anna could see the conflict in Jake's eyes, his desire to fight warring with the knowledge that violence would only make things worse for Emma. It's all right, Jake, Anna said quietly, surprising everyone. I'll go with Detective Morrison. But Emma stays here with you. Absolutely not, Morrison snapped. The child comes with a mother. Actually, Dr. Patterson interjected, territorial law is very clear about child welfare. If there's any question about potential abuse, the child remains in protective custody with suitable guardians until the matter is resolved. Morrison's face flushed with anger, but Judge Coleman's presence made it clear the decision was final. Mrs. Whitman will be in town custody until tomorrow's hearing. The child remains here. As Anna kissed Emma goodbye, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep, Jake took her hand. I'll be at that hearing, and I'll bring every witness we can find. This isn't over. Morrison roughly guided Anna toward his horse. Don't make promises you can't keep, cowboy. Richard Whitman always gets what he wants. As they rode toward town, Anna looked back to see Jake holding Emma, both of them watching her disappear into an uncertain fate. Tomorrow's hearing would determine whether love could triumph over money and power, whether the truth could set her free, or whether she'd spend the rest of her life as Richard Whitman's prisoner. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Morrison studied the medical documents spread before him. Anna's hands trembled as she watched his weathered face, Emma sleeping peacefully in Jake's protective arms. Richard Whitman paced behind his lawyer, his polished Boston demeanor cracking with each passing moment. Mrs. Whitman, the judge began, his voice carrying the weight of frontier justice. These medical records paint a disturbing picture. Broken ribs, bruised throat marks, documented injuries spanning 3 years. Richard's face flushed red. Your Honor, my wife is clearly unstable. She abandoned her home, her duties. And why might she do that, Mr. Whitman? Judge Morrison's sharp eyes fixed on Richard. Perhaps because staying meant risking her life? Anna found her voice stronger now than it had been in years. Your Honor, I lived in constant terror. He threatened to kill me if I ever tried to leave. He said no court would believe me, that he owned me and Emma completely. Lies. Richard slammed his fist on the table, causing Emma to wake with a frightened cry. The child immediately reached for Jake, burying her face in his shoulder. The judge observed Emma's reaction carefully. Mr. Cooper, how long has the child been in your care? Jake stood slowly, his voice steady and sure. 8 months, Your Honor. She calls me Papa. She's never shown fear in my presence, only joy. She's learned to walk under my roof, speaks her first words there. I love her as my own blood. And what are your intentions toward Mrs. Whitman? I want to marry her, sir. For love, not convenience. I want to give them both the protection of my name and the security of a real home. Dr. Peterson, The town's physician stepped forward. Your Honor, I examined Mrs. Whitman when she first arrived. The injuries she bore were consistent with severe physical abuse. No woman inflicts such damage upon herself. Richard's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but Richard pushed him away. That child is mine by law. I have papers. I have rights. Rights. Anna stood, her voice ringing through the courtroom. You forfeited those rights the first time you raised your hand to me. The first time you threatened to throw Emma down the stairs for crying. The first time you said you'd rather see us dead than gone. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Sheriff Williams nodded grimly. Your Honor, I've seen men like Whitman before. All charm in public, all violence behind closed doors. This town stands behind Mr. Cooper and Mrs. Whitman. Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife, spoke up. Anna saved my grandson when he nearly drowned. She's got healing hands and a gentle heart. That baby bloomed under her and Jake's care. One by one, townspeople stood to testify. The blacksmith spoke of Jake's character. The schoolteacher praised Anna's kindness. Even tough old rancher Murphy admitted he'd never seen a happier child than Emma in Jake's arms. Richard's composure finally shattered completely. Enough of this frontier theater. I'm her legal husband. That child belongs to me. I'll take them both back to Boston where they belong, and there's nothing this backwater court can do about it. Judge Morrison's gavel crashed down. Mr. Whitman, you've just revealed your true nature to this court. Your threats, your assumption of ownership over human beings, your clear intent to force an unwilling woman into a dangerous situation. The judge stood, his decision made. By the authority vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I find that returning this child to your custody would place her in immediate physical danger. Mrs. Whitman is hereby granted full protective custody of the minor child, Emma. Anna's knees nearly buckled with relief. Jake's arms steadied her as tears of joy streamed down her face. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mr. Whitman, you are hereby ordered to leave this territory within 24 hours and never return. Any attempt to contact or approach Mrs. Whitman or the child will result in your immediate arrest. Richard's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. I'll find other courts, other judges. It is over, sir. Sheriff Williams, please escort Mr. Whitman to collect his belongings. As Richard was led away, still shouting threats, Jake turned to Anna. Will you marry me? Not for protection this time, but because I love you with everything I am. Through her tears, Anna smiled brighter than the Colorado sunrise. Yes, Jake Cooper. Yes, forever. 3 days later, the entire town gathered as Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony. Emma toddled between them during the vows, her laughter mixing with the gentle autumn breeze. When Jake kissed his bride, the crowd erupted in celebration. That evening, as Jake officially signed the adoption papers making Emma his legal daughter, Anna whispered, You kept your promise. You really never left us. Never will, Jake promised, sealing it with a kiss. But as they celebrated their new beginning, neither noticed the shadowy figure watching their house from the hillside, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The mysterious figure watching from the hillside stepped into the lamplight, and Anna's heart nearly stopped. But instead of fear, recognition flooded through her. It was Margaret, her younger sister from Boston, wrapped in a traveling cloak and carrying a worn leather satchel. Elizabeth, Margaret called softly, using Anna's real name. It's me, Maggie. Anna rushed into her sister's arms, tears streaming down her face. How did you find me? Is Richard? Richard is dead, Margaret said gently, holding her sister tight. He was killed 3 months ago in a gambling dispute. You're free, truly free. Jake emerged from the house, rifle lowered but alert. Anna, everything all right? Jake, this is my sister Margaret. Maggie, this is my husband Jake, and this, Anna lifted Emma, now a confident 2-year-old, is your niece Emma. Emma studied Margaret with curious eyes before pointing to Jake. Papa, she declared proudly, making everyone smile. Margaret stayed for 2 weeks, marveling at the transformation in her sister. Gone was the frightened, broken woman who had fled Boston. In her place stood a confident ranch wife, glowing with health and happiness. "You saved her," Margaret told Jake one evening as they watched Anna teach Emma to gather eggs. "The sister I knew was dying inside that Boston mansion. This woman, she's alive again." Jake smiled, his hand resting on Anna's shoulder as she joined him. "She saved me too, and Emma saved us both." 1 year later, the Cooper Ranch had become the most prosperous spread in 3 counties. Anna's sharp mind for business combined with Jake's ranching expertise created a partnership that impressed even the toughest old-timers. Their home buzzed with activity, hands coming for meals, neighbors seeking Anna's medical advice, children playing in the yard. "Papa, look!" 3-year-old Emma ran toward Jake, her chubby arms full of wildflowers. Her face radiated pure joy, no trace of the frightened baby who had arrived on that cold train platform. "Beautiful flowers for a beautiful girl," Jake said, sweeping her up, "just like Mama used to pick." Anna approached, her hand resting on her rounded belly. 6 months pregnant with Jake's child, she moved with the confident grace of a woman completely secure in her love and place in the world. "The doctor says the baby is strong and healthy," she told Jake that evening as they rocked on their porch. Emma is sleeping peacefully between them. "He thinks it might be a boy." "Boy or girl, doesn't matter," Jake murmured, his hand gentle on her belly. "This child will know nothing but love from the moment it draws breath." Emma stirred in her sleep, automatically reaching for Jake's hand. Even in dreams, she sought the security of her papa's presence. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been at that station that day?" Anna asked. Jake considered this seriously. "I think I was meant to be there. My Mary used to say everything happens for a reason. Maybe I lost her so I could save you. Maybe you went through all that pain so Emma could have a real father, and I could have a real family again." Their peaceful evening was interrupted by the sound of an approaching wagon. Sheriff Williams climbed down, but his expression was concerned rather than threatening. "Jake, Anna," he greeted them. "Got a situation at the station. Another mail-order bride, just like you were, Anna. Husband took one look and disappeared. She's got twin babies and nowhere to go." Anna and Jake exchanged a look of perfect understanding. "Bring her here," Anna said immediately. "We have room, and I remember what that desperation feels like." An hour later, a frightened young woman named Sarah sat in Anna's kitchen, her twin boys sleeping in the basket Jake had quickly assembled. Her story was heartbreakingly familiar. A widow with nowhere else to turn, betrayed by a cowardly man who couldn't handle the reality of instant fatherhood. "I don't know what I'll do," Sarah whispered. "I have no money for return passage, no family to take us in." Anna knelt beside her chair. "You'll stay here until you figure it out. And if you decide you like Colorado, we'll help you make a new life. Someone once told me he'd never leave me, and he kept that promise. Now I'm making the same promise to you." Jake nodded his agreement. There's always room for family at the Cooper Ranch. 6 months later, the Cooper home had expanded again. Sarah had married Tom Bradley, the gentle widowed shopkeeper, and her twins played daily with Emma and baby James Cooper, who had arrived healthy and perfect in early spring. On a warm Sunday evening, 4 families gathered for their weekly dinner, a tradition that had grown from Anna's desire to create the loving community she'd never had in Boston. The long table overflowed with food, laughter, and the chaos of children. "Papa, tell the story," Emma demanded, now a confident 4-year-old who ruled the ranch with loving authority. "Which story, sweetheart?" "The one about the train station, about how you promised Mama you'd never leave." Jake's eyes met Anna's across the table, their love as strong as ever. Baby James gurgled happily in his mother's arms while Emma climbed onto Jake's lap, ready for her favorite tale. "Well," Jake began, his voice warm with memory, "it was a cold day when I saw the most beautiful woman in the world standing on that platform, looking like she needed a guardian angel." Anna smiled, her heart full to overflowing. She thought of that desperate woman who had stepped off the train with nothing but a sick baby and a heart full of fear. That woman seemed like a stranger now. In her place sat a woman surrounded by love, secure in her place in the world, blessed beyond her wildest dreams. Outside, the Colorado sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The ranch stretched endlessly toward the mountains, a testament to what love and determination could build. In the distance, the evening train whistle blew, perhaps carrying another lost soul toward their destiny. Anna closed her eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Jake had kept his promise completely. He had never left them, not for a single day. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that their love would endure for all the days of their lives. The promise made on that cold platform had grown into something beautiful beyond imagination. A forever family, rooted in love, strengthened by trials, and blessed with unshakable joy. Their story had found its perfect ending, not with riding into the sunset, but with putting down roots and watching love multiply across generations. This was what happily ever after really looked like. Ordinary moments made extraordinary by the depth of love that surrounded them. Jake concluded, kissing Emma's forehead. But really, it was just the beginning.